Are we here?
Yes, we're here and welcome. I'm Liz Taylor, ocean explorer, naturalist, and entrepreneur.
And I'm Sylvia Earle. I'm an oceanographer, National Geographic explorer, founder of Mission Blue, and I'm an ocean elder. Thank you, ocean elders, for sponsoring this program.
And this is our show, Dive In, where we host informal and open conversations with the ocean community on topics of wonder and interest. We're glad to be back and hope everyone has made some time to get outdoors.
Yes.
You can ask questions by putting them in the Q&A box, and later on we will get to as many as we can. We'll also add some links in the Zoom chat for your information. And before we get started, let's remind everyone that the world
Is blue.
blue.
Earl, did you say?
Blue.
Oh, yes.
Earth is blue.
The earth is blue. The world is blue. And today we're very grateful to be joined by both Steve Gittings and Tom Bright to talk about their incredible body of work around the Flower Garden Banks, an area of unique geological and deep reef features 80 to 125 miles off the coast of Texas and Louisiana in the Gulf of Mexico. Welcome, Steve and Tom.
Yeah,
Uh,
Thank you.
good to see both of you.
Glad we made it here.
Yeah, you sure did.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to say something about Sylvia. She's quite renowned in our kind of world, anyway.
Hmm.
Ah, there you go.
We're getting there.
Uh, I put I did this as a chat for the Flower Garden Banks, and actually, that batch of slides I sent to you comprise the talk that I gave. And what was it, 22, Steve?
Yes, let's say yes.
Yes. Come on. You want me to remember the question? Anyway, yeah. It was all my participation was primarily from the outside the temporal boundary of 1972 up until, well, up until about the time that the sanctuary was designated. And in that time, I mean, Steve, me, and about 20 graduate students utilized that submarine that Dr. Geyer bought for $100,000.
Wow, incredible.
It was a bargain.
Yeah, and made characterizations of primarily the zonation based on the species that were there, and mostly the flower gardens are capped by corals, uh, corals that covered, what did you say, Steve? 60 or 45%?
There's a standard oceanography cruise
Yeah,
in about 1967.
Got some problems here with this
that's
audio.
audio.
Stop. We tried very hard to get that out of there, but it's still going to pop in on us.
Oh, but this is so
Well,
remarkable.
I think this is Sir Pell Edwards.
Yeah,
He
it
did
is.
some great work on the geological uh,
1971.
Yeah.
and
Oh,
1970 on his work.
And then I met up with these guys, Denny Bowman and the Beard, and Bob Alderdice with the University of Texas Marine Biomedical Institute in Galveston.
amazing. So this is sort of some of like this sort of geology of the area and the phases of research, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sir Pell more or less described the zonation based on the important geological features, including the corals, who are the crossroads between corals and between the uh, coral cap that we got now, and the memory that seems to fade away.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
You know,
sorry.
there was work at the flower gardens that went on before the 70s, but not much.
Yeah.
Mostly a little bit of geology, a little bit of mapping back in the days when industry was just starting to discover what was out on the outer continental shelf. But
Yeah.
1970 or so, when Tom arrived at Texas A&M to start working there as a assistant professor, that's when things really took off. And by that time, you know, MMS was starting to realize there's a lot of things going on the outer continental shelf that we need to think about before allowing too much offshore development to happen. And so they were the early birds when it came to protection at the flower gardens, and that
Mhm.
was the early 70s. And by 1970, what, four, Tom, or 73, there were already some stipulations in place based on what knowledge we did have of that place to restrict or regulate discharges from oil and gas.
Yeah, it's really interesting, the variety of techniques that you both have been able to use over the years from the saturation diving, like we see here, the Tectite 2 that Sylvia's been in as well, and the use of hydrolab, the submersibles of various kinds that really kind of gave you like a different view than most people would have of these regions.
I first heard about the flower garden banks from, I don't think it was in Skin Diver magazine. It was from a fisherman who really saw this as like a big attracting place for fish.
Mm.
Tom, you were up there 20 years before I first glimpsed it in 1990. That was, for me, a revelation. I heard about it. The fact that there's the formation comes within a range that is suitable for coral reefs to grow, surrounded by deep water, which makes it really special. A whole series of these small seamounts across the northern Gulf.
I'm hired the next time.
Come on here. There we go.
Mm.
So,
Sorry, that wasn't me alive. That was me.
yeah, but and then a number of these papers and publications came as a result of all of your efforts out there.
Well, there's a list down there of graduate students. It's not all of them, but it's a batch of them. And the strategy was to get the students to do the work that we didn't have time to do.
That's still a strategy, I think.
Yeah, here we go. They're probably going to write me nasty notes now.
Yeah,
Mhm.
but
Yeah,
it's
that was the first book that came out about
Yeah.
the flower gardens, the biota of the West Bank. And then another book came out about what, 10 years later, Tom, the reefs
Yeah.
and banks of the northwestern Gulf of Mexico. And that's where a lot of the audio information that Tom and the rest of them gathered on the submersibles was translated into a full document based on a bunch of reports that were written.
But that wasn't the end of
God.
the outer continental shelf along
All right. You might have to
the United States.
we can't get rid of the audio.
The plot thickens.
All right. We have to stop
We
sharing.
did that.
Whoops, that was what Steve was talking about, that diagram.
Yeah.
I can just get rid of that now.
You got to get rid of me.
Yeah.
But
I want to see if I can just keep the audio from interjecting. So,
Well, I have a story. I have my story about that submersible too, that little diaphyse submersible that Tom used. When I went to grad school in 1980, first trip I took out to the flower gardens, I hadn't never been there before, was to help Tom to go out there and help support the submersible operation where he was doing the last few dives that he was going to be doing at the flower gardens on that sub. And he must have got tired of it or something. He asked me one day, he says, "You want to take one of my dives on the sub?" And I don't think he got to finish his sentence. And I was up on top of the platform getting in the sub. But he said, "What are you going to do on the trip?" And we were going down to the East Flower Garden brine seep, which is this amazing little pool, 10 inches deep only, but it's 60 yards across. And it's a pond. that you can just set the sub on if you want, and it creates ripples. It's a 7 times saltier than the seawater around it. So it's this brine,
Wow.
no oxygen, huge amount of hydrogen sulfide. And I wanted to study the effects of the brine discharge on the surrounding hard bottom. So I wanted to collect some nodules, algal nodules that are down there. And so I told Tom about this, and he said, "Okay, you can have my dive." And I collected all the samples I needed on one dive for my master's
Incredible.
thesis.
Wow.
It was wonderful. But what an opportunity, he gave me, and a career builder right from the start. He had no reason to trust me, but he did trust me, and that was his nature. And I'll be forever grateful for him, giving me those kinds of opportunities. And that was just one of dozens, but it
And
was
you
sure a big one.
It was
and
sort of
you're
self-serving because with him taking the dive, I got a chance to take a nap on deck.
Sure.
sometimes that's a really gift when you've been at sea for a long time, is getting that rest period.
Relationship grew into a very good one. Steve was
Yeah.
was there and willing to work. Now I
Yeah.
forget, did you do the biotic study at the Rhine Seat for your master's degree?
Yeah, master's, for my master's. In
Yeah.
fact, we published a paper on the hard bottom macrofauna of the East Flower Garden brine seep. That was the title of it. In 83, I think it came out. And then 40 years later, Tom and I published another paper that was related to the brine seep, but it was a hypothesis paper that theorized that brine discharges could happen up on top of the bank, not down there at 200 feet, but up at 60 feet.
Wow.
If some blocks of carbonate collapsed along a fault line and down into the brine and squeezed up the brine, just like water coming up over an ice cube. We think that happened because there was a mortality area up on top of the bank that might have succumbed to the brine that was exuded if under that process, if it in fact happened.
Can you talk a little bit about the geology of the brine domes and how they form,
The salt
the
domes.
salt domes?
Yeah, well, I can give you a brief one, Tom.
Yeah.
Tom, you want to take it or you want me to?
What?
We're talking about the brine discharges and why they happen.
How the salt domes
Yeah,
occur.
the salt domes themselves are Jurassic age, 150 million year old salt layers in the Gulf of Mexico that were laid down when it was a shallower sea. And evaporitic deposits and so forth, they got all covered up by discharges from rivers like the Atchafalaya and the Mississippi over many millions of years.
The sediment
Now
just
they're
carried out.
Yeah, now sedimentary deposits are covering it all up. But the weight of those deposits forces the salt to squeeze up through different fault areas.
Fissures and so forth. So
Yeah.
it kind of lets like squirt up into the water
So it
column.
basically migrates upwards due to pressure and buoyancy. Salt is
Yeah.
more buoyant than the rocks around it. So
Right.
it comes up to a neutral buoyancy layer and then mushrooms out. But that neutral buoyancy area is pretty close to the surface of the bottom, the seabed.
Mhm.
So you get a lot of terrain all over the northern Gulf of Mexico. If you just look at a bottom map, you'll see lumps and bumps everywhere, all a result of salt diapirism. And some of those bumps come up into shallow enough water to allow relatively shallow tropical ecosystems to develop on top of them, because they do exist in tropical waters, basically.
Mhm.
That far offshore, it's gin clear, warm water year round.
That's
So,
nice.
so the Flower Gardens is in the perfect habitat for coral reefs to form on top of these salt domes that come up to about 60 feet deep from about 400 feet at the base.
I guess that's one of the really interesting features that they have there, because so many times we see coral reefs sort of forming around, kind of volcanic seamounts and things
Yeah.
like that. But these are all salt domes.
Yeah, same. The endpoint's the same. Rocks that are available.
Yeah. Substrate.
But it's
Create the habitat and they will come.
That's right.
it's
Yeah.
nothing like what you see along the coast of Texas or Louisiana. It's out there
Not really.
125 miles offshore.
But there are, these are 100 miles out, but there are domes a little closer. And even onshore, there are salt dome expressions.
Mhm.
No corals.
No.
No fossil. There are some fossil corals on one of them, Damon Mound.
Very
So
cool.
yeah, there are a few ancient fossils on some of them. So that, with sea level change, it's, it's pretty complex history that in the Gulf of Mexico. So there were times when the flower gardens were probably islands.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
So tell us about sort of what led to the establishment of the National Marine Sanctuaries program and what it took to get Flower Garden Banks kind of approved as a sanctuary.
Ooh, yeah. Tom,
That's a
give it
big
a
question.
start. Give it a start.
Well, uh, I think the first organization that proposed the flower gardens as a national marine sanctuary were skin divers.
Hmm. Makes sense. Tracks.
So certainly they weren't interested in anything else but taking good pictures and maybe shooting a few groupers and taking them home.
Mhm.
You're not going to love the history of this, but remember that was a long time ago, and attitudes were different.
Sure.
And however, now there's virtually no organization that seems there's a enough threat to walk back the designation.
Hmm.
So, we have the thing about it is these reefs are probably in a zone of water that is just right. In other words, that you're getting 19 or 20 degrees centigrade is probably around the lowest it gets. And it may go a little higher, but not too much higher.
Hmm.
And so, because it doesn't go too much higher, there's the opportunity for the reefs, corals to survive better. They still get the food. They feed by grabbing things out of the water as it goes by. They've got the right temperature. And in spite of the fact that they're pretty close to the Atchafalaya and Mississippi rivers outflows, the outflows in general, I won't say all the time, I think tend to flow uh, east.
Hmm. It's not
And
coming right over the top of them.
big spot to grow corals.
Well, it's
Mhm.
interesting too, because we see how the surface temperatures in the Gulf can just really climb way, way up there to temperatures that are just not tolerable for corals. But it seems that these guys are deep enough that maybe they have a
Far
bit
enough
more
offshore,
far enough offshore, they have a
the
little more
current
resilience.
Mm.
Yep.
bring the cooler water.
Yeah. Being 20 meters down helps.
Yeah.
They do get occasional, very occasional, some fresh water, surface water, maybe down 10 meters or so. I haven't seen it on the bottom, but there are people who claim that it happens, but
Hmm.
it's very rare. So they're pretty insulated from turbid water, from high nutrient water, from cold water. And it's like Tom said, just ideal for growing coral reefs, which puts them in this also vulnerability state because they're fragile. And if people drop anchors on them and
Ooh,
uh,
yeah.
put
No.
drill muds on them, that just changes the fundamentals that they need to grow. So
Yeah.
that's where the interest in sanctuary even started. Divers discovered them in the 60s, and by the 70s were proposing that they needed further protection.
Hmm.
And then, like Tom worked real closely with with Bureau of Land Management back then to make sure that the oil companies were buffered and kept from being too close or on top, and wasn't in their interest anyway to be on shaky bottom like that.
No,
So
they want
yeah,
stability.
so that bit was taken care of, but the anchoring was never taken care of by those early stipulations. At least anchoring by ships or fishing boats or dive boats or anything like that. So the anchoring pushed the process along, kept it alive to an extent, but the flower gardens being that isolated, they lost momentum more than once in the sanctuary designation process because somebody was against it, either oil companies or fishermen or regulators or somebody who felt like, no, this place is not that important. It's isolated. It's already And once the oil and gas stipulations were in place, people dropped it by saying it doesn't need any more protection.
Huh.
Turned out it did, because ships started dropping anchors on the reefs, and not oil company boats, but cargo ships and stuff like that.
Oh, wow. So
You guys see
Yeah.
any of the images that
there's too much audio that keeps kicking in, and so I don't think we can
Yeah.
add them because it just overwhelms us. So,
Yeah.
but but so NOAA oversees the sanctuary program, and you were the chief scientist for that whole program for 28 years, Steve. And then Tom,
Yeah.
you had like more than 40 years experience just out there around flower garden banks. It's so during that whole process of getting it approved as a sanctuary, was it kind of like a holistic thing, or did it come in bits and pieces?
Mhm.
Why don't we go down a rabbit hole?
All right.
Sylvia, describe the experience you had with uh, Emma on your dives.
With Emma?
Emma
Yeah.
Hickerson.
Hickerson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She was the research coordinator at Flower Gardens. Did you dive with her, Sylvia, on
Oh, yes.
Sustainable Seas?
Yes, definitely.
So that was in the deep worker subs, right?
Yeah. Yeah. We did the whole Sustainable Seas
In 2000.
expeditions,
Hmm.
and we had the
And
whole,
GP Schmall.
yeah, and GP.
Yeah, I did some of those dives too, those years.
But those little deep worker submersibles, little one-person ones, they really did help us because we were able to directly train the scientists and trained you, Steve, to fly them around
Yeah.
and so
So
forth.
simple to drive, even a scientist could figure it out.
Yeah.
Trained your scientists to drive your submarine? Is that what you're saying?
That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah, that's what we did.
That's right, but we didn't have have a training. Nobody had any training. We just
No,
Yeah, we did by 2000.
yes, thankfully.
Yeah. And we needed it. There were
Yeah.
a lot of people driving those subs, so they had to be trained beforehand.
Hmm.
Well, actually, I take that back. We sure did.
Yeah.
I was fortunate enough to have some access to several marine technicians who would like
Nice.
to drive the submarine. And oh boy. Okay, when you get to be 88, there's some things that kind of just hit the top of your head and bounce off.
That's right. It's
But
just like
Tom did become a pilot for Diaphis, right?
I was trained by the people who built the submarine.
Yeah.
nice.
Well, that's same with us.
Yeah, the typical way. So we
Mhm.
collaborated with NUTCO, and so it was NUTCO and DOER. We did all the training and support for that whole program. And it was just a really nice you know, capacity to be able to get people directly researching their animals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like being a diver. You just happen to be wearing a diving suit.
All right. So by popular request, we are going to attempt to go back to these slides. But if any of them come up with this audio business again, they're going to get it's
Hey,
going to go
Liz,
past
Liz,
them.
hey, Liz, what you could do is if you don't put it in presentation mode, I think most people can still see the slide
By
itself.
running transects across the banks.
Yeah, that, I
Yeah.
wish you could mute them, but,
I'm trying to infiltrate the interview.
yeah, I know.
You are. I marked them all down here, and I went up here, and I went audio format, and I said, "Don't play the audio." Where was that? Anyway, we can
Well,
we can attempt to go through them.
while you're looking at that, let me take you just a quick tour of that designation process you were asking about.
Please.
Because where we left it back in the,
Oh wait, whoops! I cut
back
you
in the-
guys out.
what's that, Tom?
Hey, I got it.
You're
You
still
got
there.
it? We're still there.
Yeah.
You won't believe that I'm doing this on a Mac Air, and I have a Mac Pro. These things are 20 years old. They don't like my browser.
All right.
Mike Bottom and Billy Green were our pilots and me, but I didn't do it as much as those guys did. So they would take the students down and I think that was kind of a training program there, just the students getting in to the sub and riding around with these guys. And these guys had a pretty good uh, acquaintance with the bottom and the reef.
Mm-hmm.
But we didn't take the submarine on the reef. By this time, we'd had committed ourselves to non-destructive techniques after a lot of destruction was witnessed. And so we would go to the bottom of the bank, which was at about 300 feet, uh, and proceed upward. If we had to land, we would try to choose a spot where we could sit down without doing substantial damage. And that's how we would get the species and profile on that part of the bank that stretches like an apron around the whole sanctuary, around the whole coral reef. And that's what we did. And we used that technique with the submarine, but
Mm-hmm.
then there was the reef. And for the reef, some of these students were pretty good divers to begin with, and they got down and most of them picked a type of species, either fishes or crustaceans or sponges or some specific group that they would describe. And it was a pretty good deal for them because we used that as a basis for this reefs, coral reefs of the West Flower Garden Bank. Okay, you're on. I've run my memory out. I could tell you about the use of blimps for oceanography.
Blimps. That's a new tool in the quiver. That's very good.
Yeah.
Today
It only lasted about 3 hours, but I don't know how many folks have used blimps for coral studies, but now they have something called what are the little things that are flying around?
drones, little
Drones.
drones. Yep.
Oh, yeah.
A
Doing a
drone.
lot of that now.
I had gone out and bought a one of these parachute deals where you hook it to the boat, and you get fast enough, the student goes up with the camera.
Like a,
Okay.
like a what do they call it? Paraglider, parasail. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing the different kinds of techniques you can come up with.
Tom also bought an ultralight to do that once,
Oh, nice.
and then he almost crashed it, and he tried to sell it, and I said, "Oh, I'll buy it." He said, "No, you won't." He said, "I won't sell it to you."
Good. Probably shouldn't have. So what is
And
this? What is this device we're looking at here?
an ultralight airplane.
I don't think you're sharing. You're not sharing it.
Oh, it's still not sharing.
Yeah.
I'm not sharing.
At least I'm not seeing it.
All right, let's try one more time. Try
Can
one
you
more.
hear me now?
Well, the audio kept being
Yeah.
too loud for us. Would not stop.
Huh.
What's most remarkable is that this is like having a slice of the Caribbean reefs in the northern Gulf of Mexico,
Yeah.
where you really don't
And
expect to
and
see.
far less stressed than most reefs that are near
Mhm.
islands.
Well, that Gulf, that loop current sweeps the warm, clear water right across the area where, close to the shore, the water temperature in the winter gets pretty chilly, but offshore
Mhm.
it stays more constant.
Mhm.
Those reefs are just so beautiful
Yeah.
and definitely worth saving.
Yeah. And they still look the same as they did back in the 70s. In almost every way you can imagine. It's a really amazing thing. I was telling you earlier that the percent cover when it was first measured out there was about a little under 50%, about 47%, and which was really high coral cover. Now coral covers nearly 60% in a lot of places on the top of that bank, both banks, east and west flower
Excellent.
gardens. And
It works.
it's not without its issues. There are lionfish there. There are a couple other species that don't really belong there, but they don't seem to be having the impacts that they have had in less healthy reefs around the Caribbean,
That's good.
which tells you something about keeping a place healthy
Yeah.
because it's resistant to change and probably resilient if there is change.
So are you able to see this? Are you able to see the screen now with the slide?
Yeah, we can see these time-lapse cameras that Tom and his team put down in the early days to do studies on things like sea urchins and their grazing rates.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Am I right, Tom? Is that what these were?
Yeah, what this particular one is the battle between the two different species of corals.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
I can't remember what someone has renamed them.
Yeah, Orbicella.
One of them was renamed, I don't know, too many years gone by. Anyway, two different species, and they're growing side by side, but one of them is defending his territory. Both of them are defending their territory. And so what we were doing is picking out a bunch of these spots that have suitable uh, species positioned in this competitive fashion. And we took that.
Mm-hmm.
If they stayed the same, that was good. If they didn't stay the same, then we were able to tell which coral was giving up space. It was kind of interesting. A technique that Judy Lang developed in her studies. And she's still active over in the mid-Atlantic. I think they're raising oysters now or something like that.
Something.
Corals send out little mesenterial filaments from their gut and digest the next guy over to try to create space for themselves to grow
Well,
laterally.
that's not friendly, but it works, right? It's very
It
effective.
works, yeah. And the image you're showing there is that East Flower Garden brine seep down around 220 feet, and in a canyon that's associated with it, where the brine flows out over about 100 meters distance out onto the surrounding sands.
There's that brine
Yeah,
pool.
Oh, that's the brine.
That's brine between sand ridges.
Very cool.
And bacteria, the white is bacteria all along the edge that uses hydrogen sulfide and oxygen to create its energy. So sulfide oxidizers, that particular bacteria is, and it creates an enrichment that's nutrient for food for everything else around.
Yeah.
So as it flows down out of that canyon, it's a carbon exporter to the surrounding bottom. And that's what I was studying, the enrichment of the surrounding area by the brine pool and system itself.
so the fish swimming above are safe as long as they don't get
Too close.
Occasionally they do, and they get all wobbly. I
It
guess
just kind of overwhelms them, doesn't it? They kind of like get too close to the surface and they just kind of lose motor function. Or do they, or is it suffocation, or what is it that overcomes them?
That's probably like breathing in hydrogen sulfide is for you and me.
Yeah, just like, oh,
A dose of chlorine or something, where it just hits you and you're staggered for
yeah,
a short period. And if you fall in, you're gone, you're dead. But if you swim off and get out of it, you can recover.
recover. Wow.
Yeah.
There are
But
quite a
sulfur,
few.
look at this. This is the Vegetoa and some other sulfur feeding bacteria.
Yeah.
And it overflows, the picture on the right, and goes on down in that stream. Several particular sites can be re-identified, and one can get an idea of what the balance is there between sulfur bacteria and the brine itself.
Mm-hmm.
But oxygen and hydrogen sulfide do not do well together.
No. It's really,
But
unless you're a Vegetoa.
yeah,
if you need oxygen to live by, you're not going to make it in this pool here.
yeah.
But
It's a
it's
really interesting ridge it has right here too.
right.
Yeah, that's the bacteria.
And this is what sort of kind of gave us an idea of the cause of that unexplained mortality back, gee, what was that, 15 years ago, Steve?
Yeah, 10, 15, I don't remember. But yeah, there was a area
Uh,
uh, up on top of the bank at 60 or 70 feet that divers reported had real hazy water one day.
Hmm.
And the next day, or a couple days later, when the monitoring team got over to look at it, there were dead things laying everywhere in the sand flats in that
Hmm.
particular portion of the reef. And I mean, dead, dead stuff
Wow.
that just clearly died in place and was floating on the bottom. And a bathtub ring almost of of dead area with living coral above it. So clearly something filled up those sand basins on the top of the bank in that restricted area and killed everything in those sand basins and then went away. There was
Huh.
nothing left to be found. We couldn't ever discover what chemical, was there a dumping? Was there something else that happened? Anoxia, anything? What happened? And there was no evidence of anything other than dead animals
That's wild.
and dead corals. And that's where Tom and I eventually got this idea, Tom's idea mostly, that said, what if Brian were able to find a way out of from beneath the ground and collect in those sand flats up on top of that bank in a restricted area, and then ooze out through the holes in the reef as a day or two goes past? That would kill everything and that would move on.
Yeah.
And we wrote up a paper on that and it was published. And then there was another paper that had been written before that, hypothesizing something different, the arrival of hypoxic water from near shore Gulf of Mexico waters, and that hypoxia killing those corals. Um, Tom and I were a little skeptical of that, but it's a mechanism that could have happened. There was no proof either way of which way it might have gone, so it's still to be determined what really happened there, what killed
Yeah.
those corals.
And what have we got happening in this 1976 one here?
That's the anchor at the mouth of the canyon that leaves the brine seep. You're back almost to normal sediments down there, normal waters,
Hmm.
but not quite, not quite.
actually, I guess we discovered it in 1976.
Hmm.
Uh, and actually, uh, this is from some video that I took or photos that I took in 76.
Hmm.
And I don't know if you can see the next slide.
Hmm. I think there
Well,
is another slide of this anchor in later years
yeah.
somewhere.
Anyway, it stood its ground for 76, 10 or 12 years.
Yeah.
And yeah, and it when they tried to pick it up, it crumbled away. It's
Crumbled away. It's just too far gone.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was too far gone. It had no
Yeah.
structure. Now this slide goes into a little more detail about sulfur bacteria. So, and we see the purple and the white,
Hmm.
different types of sulfur bacteria just having a ball, surviving in this paradise that they have. Too bad they're only bacteria.
Well,
Well, as you go down that canyon, though, and get out near that anchor, what you find is equivalent to a sewage discharge where
huh.
there's nutrient enrichment of the surrounding area. So you get a low diversity of certain types of animals, but a huge abundance of them. And then as you drift away from that, you get back to normal critters and so forth. There's things called gnathostomulids that are in a huge abundance, and nematodes, huge abundances around the brine seep because they can tolerate some elevated hydrogen sulfide and elevated salinity. But as you get farther away, of course, then it's just so they become food for other things.
Yeah. Amazing
Steve
looking to
and
look
I both have uh, worms named after us.
Yes, we do.
at.
Yeah.
Yes.
Little critters.
Yeah.
There were so many people involved in this. I'm sure not all of them got got credit of having worms named after them.
No, but yeah, there's mine.
Here's your worm.
Is mine in there? I don't.
I
No,
think
was
he's
it, was
good.
it
I
this
think he's a pretty
guy?
good looking nematode myself.
Yeah,
That's Tom's, I believe.
there's Tom's. Yeah.
Yeah, looks old to me.
We used to have a saying in the oceanography department, or the students had a saying, oceanography is fun. And it actually is, as a matter of fact.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Ah, there you go.
There he is.
Up in time.
Yeah, that was before my time, but he's taking a nap then too.
Yeah.
That was his name is Rob Abbott with his camera, and Rusty Putt with his fist wound up, and God blame it, I can't remember that kid.
Rick Tejan, I think.
You think so?
Rick Tejan, maybe.
Maybe.
Tejan. Yeah. So, and Greg Boland on the upper right. Greg's been
I got
around
my new
longer
dog.
than most of us.
Yeah.
Come on.
Uh-oh.
I'm conversing with my dog.
Very good.
We went down to the shelter, and we got this beautiful lady, and she actually came with some training.
That's a good thing.
She's trying to talk to me now. Busy right now. We'll get together later.
That's right.
That's a picture of the oil platform there, the gas production platform that was actually inside the sanctuary when it was finally designated in '92. That was within the boundaries of the sanctuary.
Wow.
And that stayed there, and now is an artificial part of it's an artificial reef down below, I think, 90 feet or so.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that. You know, it is kind of quite the juxtaposition, or you have, you know, sort of very heavy industry right on the edge of the sanctuary, and I think it's very, I don't know, I'll say kind of characteristic of the sort of the conflict that goes on within NOAA being in the Department of Commerce, and then you have fisheries, and then you have sanctuaries, and there's always sort of this, you know, give and take and ebb and flow about what, you know, how do you really enforce protection, and what does protection really mean in a sanctuary?
It's a debate that probably will never go away, but it is a requirement in the law of the Marine Sanctuaries, National Marine Sanctuaries Act, to allow multiple use to the extent that it's compatible with resource protection. And that's always like, what do you mean?
Yeah, what do you mean?
And most of the time when a sanctuary is designated nowadays, oil and gas is off the table.
Right.
In fact, every time. But other uses, fishing, etc., are not outright banned. But there might be controlled at a higher level, as they are at flower gardens, to reduce impacts to the bottom resources, etc. So there are restrictions usually on uses, but there still many allowed that most people think shouldn't be, or some people think shouldn't be.
So do you ever get any collaboration with the oil and gas industry in terms of doing any kind of, you know, observation or utilizing the platform in any kind of way for surveys of animal life, or is there any kind of synergy there, or does it seem a little bit?
We got quite a lot. When I was manager from 90, I was the first manager in 92 when it was first designated up through about 98. Then when I came to headquarters, the first day of my job, I was at a dive show and three guys came walking down the aisle in suit and tie. And there were, I guarantee it, 5,000 people there. Only three people had a suit and tie.
That's right.
And they came up to me, and it was just at the end of a controversial thing that happened where Texaco was laying a pipeline between the east and west flower garden banks. And the press got a hold of it. Sierra Club was very unhappy, and some real bad press came out. And Texaco ended up having to move that platform before they installed it, or reroute it. Around the edge of the bank. And they got some really bad press, and it was quite uncomfortable for them. But they came up to me and said, "We'd like to take you out for dinner." And I thought, oh, here we go. I'm gonna be rich. But it wasn't the case at all. I asked my supervisors, they said, "Yeah, go talk to them." Well, we went to dinner and they said, "Look, all we wanted, here's the phone numbers of the president of the company and the operations manager, everybody. Call them before you go to the press if you ever have any problems with the oil industry."
Right.
call the Offshore Operators Committee, call Texaco directly, call whoever, API, because we have as much interest in protecting those banks as you do, believe it or not.
Hmm.
Because we are the ones that are going to get blamed for anything that happens out there.
That's right. Yeah.
So, and they were very generous over the years. I had some on my advisory committee that worked on this platform, and they gave us access for weeks at a time, and we could keep boats up there. We could do dive training. We could motor back and forth to the East Bank and do studies, and then they would make observations for us and do not enforcement actions, but surveillance for us,
Yeah.
and let us know if some ship was anchored there or whatever. We got quite a bit of cooperation, as much as we ever asked for it, frankly.
That's good. And the platforms really do serve as sort of another level of settling zones for those little, corals and other invertebrates and
Yeah,
critters that
and
settle down on
and lionfish and a few other ones that you don't want, but yeah,
them. Yeah.
they are islands of diversity. But there are a lot of corals and everything on those banks, on those platforms, which is why a lot of them are being left in place now as artificial reefs to enhance productivity of certain species, at least. They're
Yeah.
not natural, but they are productive.
Yeah. We had one of our earlier programs, we had the Rigs to Reef women with us, Amber and Emily, and
Mhm.
they really talked about how, in many cases, there can be space for collaboration like that instead of pulling the whole thing out and killing everything that's there. Is there a path forward to kind of lay them down in a way that they can still support, the animals that are living there?
Yeah, that's what happened here.
That's good.
So, yeah, they took the top off, and oh, there's Tom's whole list of all his graduate students.
All the graduate students.
Yeah, yeah, all the ones he
There,
supervised. There were a
this
bunch
is
of other ones.
yep.
Yeah.
It's
Okay, so actually, the Flower Gardens was lucky or fortunate where the oil traps are, the petroleum traps are at the point where the surrounding. Oh, hush. Okay. Good Lord. At the point where the oil traps are lying up against the salt bank, the
Hmm.
salt part of the bank, and so they would do better to drill sort of sideways
Mhm.
into the trap without having to go through all the overlying overburden reef. So
Yeah.
that was good. And also on the discharge of effluents or the accidental discharge of drill cuttings and such.
The mud. Yeah.
Yeah. Dave McGrail did a study of the, I would say, nephrology. In other
Mhm.
words, he studied the very close to the bottom currents. And we got together with some of the engineers in the oil company, and one of them came up with this idea of maybe we could discharge it way down below where nobody can see it. Well, I said, no, I don't think so. But what if we discharge it down below and see what happens? So we did a study, and on the A389, the bottom was 300 feet.
Wow.
So none of us were going to go down there. We could have gone down in the sub, but I nixed that. That's too close to heavy equipment that's attached to the bottom with those trap platforms. So the factors that would be negative for the survival of the corals, fortunately, occurred right there around where the sanctuary is now. And I think it was lucky to figure that out. And then we applied the same philosophy to all the banks up there and found that going south, when you get south of Stetson, you don't have the oil, you don't have the salt,
Mm-hmm.
cause a salt dome. And going east toward Mississippi, you don't have the salt there. And you do have all the effluent from the Mississippi River. So, in a lot of ways, the flower gardens was just lucky. They were.
Yeah. It
We
seems
still
like
have now. The biggest, most effective reason for designating them as a sanctuary was throttling the impact of uh, anchoring on the coral.
Hmm.
And we found some pretty drastic examples of that and made that an issue. And it was an issue, bona fide issue. And that is what sort of kicked it over the barrier. And it was after that incident with the what was the name of that barge?
It was called the Nick Candies in 1984.
Oh, the Nick Candies.
And it was the designation had stalled at that time because people assumed most everything was taken care of. And then that anchoring happened. And Continental Shelf Associates had a contract at the time to do some monitoring out there, and they were on site and saw it and videotaped it.
Oh,
So,
wow.
and Tom and others had this idea that, hey, I know how to work with Congress. Let's give a congressman this video and show them what's really going on out there, and maybe they can, be coerced into helping us out. And
That's good.
that helped get it back on the list. Is Tom, was it given to John Breaux? Is that, or was it Solomon Ortiz?
Actually, I can't remember the name of the
Yeah.
of the gentleman that I gave it to.
He was, yeah.
What was
But
it?
you're able to get
I think he
congressional
was,
help.
I think he was a staffer for one of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of his staffers.
Yeah.
Anyway, he took it to Congressman, I guess it was Congressman Ortiz.
Yeah.
Nice.
And Ortiz ran it by the Washington factory. And then Mr. Breaux got in it. And we were stirring the pot like a bunch of weird
Activists.
Activists,
Yeah.
scientists, troublemakers.
They were.
Troublemakers.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's what kicked it loose.
That's good.
It was up,
Consider
Well, it got, Tom, I'd say it kicked it sort of loose. It didn't finalize the process.
no, it
And
didn't.
we can't avoid talking about this part of it because that was 1984, 85, around in there.
That's
So
a
it's
long
back on the
process.
list and alive to an extent. But there were other things keeping it from moving too fast. But then Sylvia became chief scientist of NOAA not long after that. And when she talks about coming out there, that was to happen in 1990.
That's
The
right.
flower gardens had really, it got to a point, right? And it wasn't being kicked over the final finish line. But Sylvia came out to the flower gardens to visit. That was the first time a senior NOAA official ever went there, as far as I know.
Wow.
Trudy Cox had gone there, I think, and been treated to, the oil companies had given her a good show and all that. So a couple people had visited. And it seems to me, Sylvia, that, Tom worked all those years getting it all lined up. And I think you were in the right place at the right time to kind of kick it over that finish line and say, when you went back to DC, it's time to finish this up. And then within a year or so, it was a done deal.
That's awesome.
Thank you, Sylvia.
Well,
Yes.
no, could not have happened but
Thank
for
you.
all that was there to make it so.
Yeah. All the groundwork, all the dive work, the leg work,
No, the evidence.
the evidence, exactly.
And when you think about it, it's a tiny place in a very large body of water. It would seem, which should be so easy to say this place should be protected. And I think the the attitude is beginning to shift, knowing that protection works to safeguard places that are special.
Mhm.
And the knowledge that the ocean is so vital to everything we care about, including our existence. And in the last 50 or 60 years, so much has been taken out of the ocean and so much has been put into the ocean that the nature of things that we take for granted, the resilience of fish populations,
Mhm.
it's really changing. And we
Hmm.
need more protection, not less.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I'm with you on that. Flower gardens is one of the great examples of how protection can allow a healthy place to stay healthy if it's enforced and so forth.
Yeah.
I will say, not to end on a down note in any way, but the climate models right now are saying that by 2040 or so, the temperatures in the summer are going to be reaching high enough levels each year to probably stimulate at least some bleaching or cause
Mhm.
some
Yeah.
bleaching.
Despite the
Now,
depth that they're at.
that's not good
No.
because even though we've seen bleaching happen occasionally over the decades, it's maybe once a decade or so.
Yeah.
Living it every year could really be stressful. And that's why minimizing all the other non-climate stressors on that place is so important now because
Right.
maybe the inherent resilience of the ocean and resistance to an extent at the flower gardens can be kept alive.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
All
It's
right.
not over yet.
We have 3 questions in the queue that we're going to try to get to before we have to run
Okay,
away.
fire away.
So Sarah wants to know, are the historical black and white underwater photos of the corals available? They're a great resource for historical ecologists and to study conservation and restoration efforts.
All of those slides are public. What it was when it's
Public
Domain.
domain?
Yeah.
public domain. So
Excellent.
you may use them for educational purposes with my blessing.
Mhm.
And in fact, if you can make anything of the whole presentation, you can use that way. But those slides can be duplicated on your computer, and I think they're in there in that.
All right.
Yeah.
We'll
Just
see if
take
we
it
can
out,
get those.
We'll follow
save
up
it.
with them.
Yeah, we'll follow up on that. And
Well,
James, go
we
ahead.
used to, can I just say, we also
Yeah.
used to use, even in the 70s, images of the bottom that were lined up in transects. And
Yes.
I don't know if those photos are still available. If they are, then you could really look closely at color photos from way back then.
Yes.
Hmm. That'd be very cool.
We used that all the many years and when we got quantitative.
Hmm. James is asking, what makes the coral, oops, yeah, what makes the coral coverage so much greater on this reef than other reefs that are now suffering? And what can we learn from this amazing system that can help with suffering reefs across Florida and the Caribbean?
Hmm.
So are they some of the same species or are they different?
They're mostly the same species. There are a reduced number of species compared to all species in the Caribbean. There's something like 65 or so hard coral species in the Caribbean, and only about 25 or so exist at the flower gardens. So there's a lower diversity that might reduce competition between individuals. We don't know. Um, they are all massive head corals as opposed to tiny little species that don't form a lot of cover. There are some small ones in there, but the lack of there's also a lack of soft corals. So
Hmm.
up on the Gorgonians and so forth on top of the reef, they're not there. It's
Yeah,
just hard corals. So the
it's all
diversity is
hard coral.
relatively low.
Yeah.
The cover is high for reasons that I don't know that I could fully explain why cover is so high there, other than it's just a healthy environment.
Yeah.
Um,
The water quality that
yeah,
far on the shore is pretty consistent and pretty good
yes.
compared to closer to the shore, where you get much more variability.
Yeah.
Excellent. And then the last question we're going to take is, are there any soundscape recordings available from the early days or even more recently?
We wish.
We wish.
We so wish that was
Ah,
true in so many
made
places.
some sounds, what could be possibly considered a soundscape raw footage in the Bahamas,
Yeah.
or at Lee Stocking Island.
Okay. Yeah.
And I have sent them recently to a a researcher there who is looking at some of the aspects of acoustic as related to the environment. So, and I always thought that was a good idea, but I never had time to get around to it.
Yeah.
I did have fun taking the observations.
All right.
We're going to the flower garden banks, Steve, with the
Yes,
Heart Research Institute, Corpus Christi.
in 1 month.
In a month about.
Yeah,
And one
that's
of
going to be a great time.
Keisha Bear's students will be with us. We'll be filming, and maybe we should make a point of doing some acoustics while we're there.
Yeah, get some hydrophones out
Yeah.
there.
Yes.
Not a bad idea.
The fish that do the best are squirrel fish, of course.
They're noisy.
Be noisy.
And
Yeah.
Now that I'm thinking about it, when I was chief scientist in the sanctuary program, there was a sound data, the sound experiment, sound recording, what do you call it? There was equipment placed in many sanctuaries to collect sounds. I have to check with the flower gardens to see if that happened there, whether it's been consistent or not. I think
Yeah.
they might have sound hydrophones in that sanctuary. If not, we should look into that, Sylvia, because
definitely
that is an opportunity that we really missed, getting early days healthy coral reef sounds.
Yeah.
Because you can measure biodiversity in many different ways, and that's one
Oh
of
yeah.
them.
Sound is a big one in the ocean, and it's
Yeah.
interesting that some scientists are experimenting now with playing the sounds with underwater speakers of healthy reef sounds, or
Right.
they believe are healthy reef sounds
Exactly.
on reefs that have been damaged from bleaching or big storm situations to kind of like recruit the good guys to come back, you know.
Yeah.
And
They've demonstrated fish respond to sounds and orient to habitats based on sound.
yeah.
Mhm.
All right. One last one is, how does the hard coral diversity of the flower garden banks compare to the shallower reefs, Caribbean reefs?
It's like I was saying, it's about a third of the hard coral species of the Caribbean basin occur there.
Okay.
So, I'd say compared to reefs that are in closer near islands in the same depth range, it might be half to 2/3 of the species that are there of the hard corals are at the flower gardens. That'd be my guess. Tom did a paper on that. It was called Hermatypes of the Flower Garden Banks, and he compared them to Bermuda and I can't remember where else, Mexico, I think. So he did a little bit of comparison across the basin of those. But yeah, I'd say you could expect to see probably half the species at the flower gardens that you'd see elsewhere, but way bigger. There are some corals over 20 feet across there.
Wow. That's
There are
wild.
huge corals in many places out there.
And we had a note finally before we close in the chat or in the Q&A that says that most of the sound data is coming from Stetson Bank, and that there is a new hydrophone ready to be deployed again this summer out there. So that's a
Okay.
good thing. Yay. Good news.
I'm not guessing that came from an insider.
Yeah, from Michelle here in the.
Oh, excellent. Excellent.
Yeah.
My
It's
gosh.
such a privilege to have.
Here's
have-
another angle on that. The Acropora,
Mhm.
palmata.
That's
And-
elkhorn coral. Mhm.
The Elkhorn. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, they never were living on the reef when I looked at it,
Yep.
nor I believe were they living on the reef when you took over.
Right.
But in the meantime, there's been a small number of these species occurring there, which prefer the dynamics of surf and so on close to shore. And I just wonder how that's going to turn out.
Yeah,
That's
there were
very
three. There were three colonies there when I was down that way, and they're gone now. I believe is the latest information I have on them. But yeah, there were just three colonies of Acropora that showed up recently alive. If you look in the fossil record at the flower gardens, down underneath the head corals, you can find fossil Acropora. It used to be a dominant species there, or at least an abundant species, when the sea level was down shallower, maybe 5,000 years ago.
Like so.
All right, guys. Well, we are a little bit past the top of the hour. I really want to say thank you so much. Um, and thank you to our producers, Ocean Elders, and everyone out there in the dive-in community who continues to join us for these wonderful conversations. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Tom.
You're welcome.
Such a privilege to have the two of you.
Absolutely.
This
It's
is
amazing wealth of knowledge.
We need to remember the past so we can anticipate the future. And to have you, Tom, with your knowledge, and you, Steve,
Treasures.
and to combine it with what we're going to be doing this year to look at the whole sequence. This is really a privilege.
Mhm.
So thank you
Well,
both
thanks.
so much. And
We
thank you
sure
for the
appreciate
dog
it.
introduction too. He's great.
Yeah.
A dog and cat both in this episode.
My name is Lula.
Lula, very good.
If you read Devin Ivanovich, you'll know, but it's short for Tallulah.
Tallulah, yes, very good.
She's a honey, really, and we got her from the pound.
That's
Okay.
excellent. All right. Thank you again. We're grateful to everyone. Remain curious, spend time in nature, and remember, take care of the ocean.
As if your life depends on it, because
It does.
it does.
It does. Bye for now.
Bye for now. Sylvia, it's good to see you again.
And you.